Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is time. This is our first episode. Welcome to it. You found us. I'm Bob Baskerville of Rocky Top Insider. Next to me, you see the one and only Chris Lowe of On3 Sports. We appreciate you checking us out for our first episode of the RTI Lowdown. When Chris and I started this conversation just a few weeks ago, we both knew that in the midst of all the changes that you would be seeing around Vol Nation when it comes to content creation, we felt that we could really combine our forces to offer something that will offer the fans something about Tennessee content that could be a little different, but certainly equally informative, because on the weekends, everybody's really clamoring for that content. So that's what we're going to do. Now, Chris is one of the best in the business. I'm going to brag on him here for a second. And between the great work he does and the breadth of his network, which is, again, as good as it gets, combined with the power of Rocky Top Insider, we feel like we've got an opportunity to do something really, really good here. We'll talk Vols, of course, but we'll also talk about the SEC for the stories that matter, and also just college sports at large. There's a lot of stuff breaking today, as a matter of fact. And we'll cover not just football. We are in football season, so that'll be the straw that stirs the drink, of course. But we'll also cover basketball, a little baseball too. And we'll also take questions from you. We'll be able to do that by having you go to our email address of rtilowdown@gmail.com, rtilowdown, all lowercase, @gmail.com. You can submit them there, and we'll do our very best to answer them on the show. But on Sunday nights, we hope you're going to be tuning in. We're going to be hopefully a regular destination for you. Now, let me officially introduce my co-host, Chris. CeeLo, excited to get this going, man. Very excited. How you doing?
Yeah, that makes two of us, Bob. Sunday nights to me are gold in football season. But obviously the NFL games are going on, but you got the game that's so fresh in your mind from Saturday, and then you can point ahead to what's coming up. Everybody, certainly this early in the season, everybody's still ready to win a championship. Everybody's in that race. But I love Sundays, and having done Sunday radio now for 2 decades. There's so much to talk about, and man, I'm fired up to team with you, with RTI, and talk about the Vols. Last night was a tough loss, but I think it just, to me, underscores why, when you look at where this program is in year 5 under Josh Heupel, there's still a lot to look forward to. And I think all season, as this team continues to grow, is what I think is going to be just complete carnage in the league. And we can get into that later on. This league is different. It's different, as I say, what was the old saying? You're different than your granddad's SEC. Well, maybe this is different than your dad's SEC. There's just not a lot of what I would call top heaviness in this league. And I think that's going to make this year and our show that much more fun.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. It's and you just nailed it. I feel like we're at a moment in time with just college sports in general. There's so much chaos that's going on in terms of, all the stuff that we hate to talk about, but it's part of the business these days, whether it's NIL, transfer portal, all those things. But now we're with the action on the field. So you combine all those things, and I agree with you, just based on what we've seen in some of the early weekends of college football, it's never been tougher. And but I think we're going to be talking about our guys today. And I think what we saw yesterday, tough, heartbreaking loss notwithstanding, I think we shape up pretty good. So let's get to it. Let's talk about our topic A for today, which was an instant classic in Neyland Stadium. The atmosphere was elite. Game day was in the house earlier before the game. The weather, perfect, sold out crowd. And from what I've heard, as loud as it's ever been in Neyland. The game fit the bill as well. And that said, it's obvious that the outcome of the game wasn't with what any Tennessee fan wanted, but probably in a way not the outcome that any Vol fan expected. Because here's my thoughts, Chris. If you would have told me going into the weekend, I talked about it on my radio show, and I said this, I felt like if Tennessee scored 28 points, they were probably going to win this game. I really believe that. If you were going to tell me that Tennessee was going to score 41 points in a game against Georgia, which is perennially one of the best defensive teams in college football, I would have laid a lot of money on that. I'm not a betting man usually, but that's one I would have put some money on, because I just feel like no way Georgia's got that in them to score more than 41. But alas, they did.
Well, I'm the same way, because Georgia doesn't play that many games like that. They don't play a lot of track meet type football games.
Right.
It's not been Kirby's MO there. Now, they may beat you. They may score 40-something, but rarely do they win 41-38 or 44-41, which was the case yesterday. So I don't think a lot of people saw that come. I had a chance to visit with some of the Georgia coaches Friday night before the game, and there was a lot of respect for Tennessee's offense, for Aguilar, what they've seen. They actually felt that Jesse Perry at right tackle. Now, I know David Sanders was a highly recruited kid and has not played, but they were more concerned about Perry being in there at right tackle than Sanders at that point, mostly because Sanders hadn't played. That's not really a diss to Sanders, but what they've seen on tape, they felt like Tennessee had protected well, and Aguilar had moved around and made a lot of plays, had played with a lot of confidence, hadn't thrown the football to the other team. So I know in just visiting with them on Friday night, they felt like there was no doubt in their mind this was going to come down to the fourth quarter, the last 4, 5, 6 minutes, which it did. Now, no one said when I talked to him, Bob, that, yeah, this is going to be a 40-something to 40-something game. But I don't think anybody, if you sort of pump truth serum in them, felt like that the two defenses were just going to dominate this football game. And that's what happened. And let me say this too about Tennessee's defense. I still hear, which is crazy to me, people getting on Tim Banks' case. They did last year, and his defense was the backbone of that team. I heard a couple of guys on game day yesterday say, well, Nico Iamaleava led Tennessee to a playoff. No, he didn't. The defense, Tennessee's defense led him to the playoff last year, if you want to be completely honest about it. But I still hear Banks again, a big game, giving up 40+. Listen, Tennessee's defense yesterday gave them a chance to put that game away. When they forced the strip sack there with about 8 minutes to play on Georgia's 34, in a game where both teams are going up and down the field, which invariably happens in the season, you're going to have some of those type games. But when your defense makes a play like that on the other team's end of the field, that's the point you got to put a team away. You got to finish them, and Tennessee did. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody saw that coming, but there probably will be at least one more game like that for Tennessee, where they're going to have to score one more touchdown or make one more stop in the fourth quarter. And I wrote a column that's up on On3 now. I really believe, even though they lost that game, and I know there was a lot of just, gnashing of teeth and people were upset and sick to the stomach walking out of Neyland Stadium. Trust me, I saw them last night as I made my way down to the Georgia locker room. That game will serve Tennessee well as long as they continue to grow, as long as they can get healthy. And I think that's the key, Bob. They have got to get some guys back on defense, and don't let one loss, and Josh Heupel's been great at this, don't let one loss turn into 2 or 3. His teams have typically gotten better. And I think when you look at Tennessee's schedule and compare it to some of the other teams' schedules in the league, I think Tennessee's schedule is a little bit more advantageous. So I've got no doubt that we flip the calendar to November, and Tennessee will still be very much in the playoff conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have to say, I mean, I was posting it on social media last night while I was watching the crunch time of this game. I think this is one of the biggest takeaways, is that the offense is alive and well, right? I mean, there were 2022 vibes in that game last night, all the way till the very end, when I thought we were going to win on the walk-off field goal, and alas, that didn't happen. But still, I think that's my biggest takeaway. After letting this settle for about 24 hours, I was very disappointed yesterday, but you and I texted a little too, and it felt like, man, what you have to take away from this, and I said this going in, was a loss to Georgia. I don't think anything major would be lost, but obviously we want to win that game just for all the reasons of, well, remaining undefeated, but also getting off the schneid on having lost 8 in a row to Georgia, all of those things. But if we lose it, it's not like the season's done by a long shot. As a matter of fact, I feel better about this team in a lot of ways than I did going into that game against Georgia.
Well, think about how Tennessee lost to Georgia the last 4 years,
Right.
since Josh arrived in 21. They didn't lose to Georgia. Georgia beat them up. They physically beat them up. They got after Tennessee's quarterbacks. They didn't allow Tennessee to make any big plays in the passing game. Tennessee wasn't able to get to the Georgia quarterback. So those things sort of flipped in that game yesterday. You saw Tennessee with some explosive plays in the pass game. You saw, as I said a minute ago, Tennessee make the big play on defense. And sometimes great defense. I don't want to hammer this home too much, but sometimes great defense is be able to make plays when you got to make them in timely situations. And, yeah, I know Tennessee gave up the 4th and 6th touchdown pass. They gave up the 2-point play. But I still go back to that strip sack. And those are the kinds of things you need your defense to do in critical moments. And I think that will serve Tennessee well. But Tennessee didn't get beaten up physically yesterday, Bob. There's a lot of things that went wrong against Tennessee that you can fix. You can fix false start penalties. You can fix making some field goals. You can fix batting a ball away on 4th down. I think the staff, and Josh is as good as anybody at self-scouting, they'll go back and look at that series when they got the ball with about 8 minutes to play, and they ran the ball 3 straight times. You throw the ball and get a couple of first downs and take that clock down under 4 minutes and you score a touchdown, game's over. And we all get to play Monday morning quarterback after the game. We all have things we look at and say, well, if I'd had that to do over, I'd have done this. And that's just part of, being fans and getting to do what we do. We're not on the sideline on Saturday. But I didn't see anything in that game, unlike last year, unlike a couple years ago, where you're just like, whoa, Tennessee's not ready. They're not ready to line up and get in that octagon and do what it takes to win against a team like this that's physical and been there. I mean, that's Kirby Smart to a T yesterday. They win even when maybe, as he said himself, they don't deserve to win. They find ways to win, and that's probably the next step for Tennessee. The good news, and again, I don't repeat myself, is Tennessee played to a level physically. They weren't intimidated. They jumped out on Georgia. If they were to meet again, and I don't know that it's out of the realm of possibility that they don't play again at some point, SEC championship game, playoff, then they stood toe-to-toe with them. They just got to learn how to finish football games. And that's sometimes against really, really good opponents is a hard lesson.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that felt, like I said, I was catching 2022 vibes, but that felt like a playoff game yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for sure. And I've heard it from some other people too, who have, people I respect saying the same thing. And that just speaks to the caliber of the two teams. And so again, of course, it's disappointing that we lost, but I think there's some big takeaways, right? We talked very top line about the offense, but for an offense that, at least speaking for myself, going into the season after summer camp, we felt it was a little suspect because why? We had such a new QB1 in Joey Aguilar. Guy only had 100 days roughly to get the hang of Josh's offense, which, is not simple, and there was also inconsistencies. We don't need to rehash 2023 and 2024, but there were challenges there. And a lot of it did kind of emanate at the quarterback position. There were good moments, but there were a lot that weren't as good. So all of that, I think, gave us caution to be like, I don't know, man, I don't know what to expect with this team this year. I would say yesterday's game allayed a lot of those concerns. I thought the start of the game, Chris, it was a sight to behold. We saw explosiveness, but it was rooted in precision. Joey Aguilar, 14 of 14 right off the bat in the first quarter. Vols are up 21-7. Again, did not see that coming, and it was so much fun to see it happen, though.
I had a chance to talk to Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler, who did the game for ESPN yesterday, and then both of those gentlemen have been to Neyland Stadium a lot. And the thing that they both have talked about, and talked to Kirk a little bit about this yesterday, is there was a time, and Tennessee fans may not want to hear this, but there was a time, and I felt the same way, that Neyland Stadium sort of lost its teeth. It just wasn't the place that opponents just said, God, I got to go and play there. It lost that R, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Boy, it's got it back now. And they both were just, and it's a it's a credit to all the people there at Tennessee, the game day experience and the lighting and everything there. But it's mostly credit to Josh and his staff and the way the players have played so well at Neyland Stadium and made it a tough place to play. The Tennessee fans have been through a lot over the last couple of decades, and you feel the hunger when you go in that stadium before the game, and it's as good. And I'm blessed, man. I've been to football settings all over the country, pro and in college, and as I walk up to the game yesterday, sort of take in and the sights and the sounds around it, go out there and watch the boats roll in on the Vol Navy, and you get in there before kickoff, and Tennessee gets off to such a good start on big third downs. That crowd's going crazy. That's the way I remember Tennessee football. And I was in school in the mid-'80s. I always go back to 85, the Sugar Vols year, and that place was crazy, the 98 national championship season. And I remember thinking to myself, well, this is football nirvana. It's that way again. It's been that way now for the last couple of years. So when you get those kind of environments, Bob, we got yesterday in Neyland Stadium, I can promise you this: Tennessee didn't win, but I bet you they won a few commitments from kids who were there at the game watching. I've already seen some things online where people talked about, man, it doesn't get any better than this. People have noticed of what again, the whole game day experience of what it's like at Tennessee. And they're great venues. I love going to Baton Rouge on Saturday. I mean, there's nothing like Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. Auburn, Jordan-Hare Stadium on a Saturday night is great. Hanging out in the Grove, the SEC has so many of those type settings, but I think Tennessee's gotten back to a place, Bob, where it's as good as anywhere else in the country.
Yeah, and it's funny what you said about the recruits too. I mean, I think all sports might have benefited from the recruiting aspect yesterday, right? I mean, I know Rick had basketball recruits in, Kim had basketball recruits in, and I just think it's all encompassing when you come and see that environment and it happening. My partner, who you've met before, John Osborne, with Rocky Top Insider, he's been a season ticket holder for as long as he can remember, since he was a little kid back in the 70s. And he said he doesn't remember it being as loud as it was yesterday in all that time. And that's pretty amazing when you think of that. I mean, just to get, those are the times I wasn't at the game. I was watching on TV, of course, but those are the moments I'm like, because I'm kind of at that point in my life where I'm like, I don't know if I want to go down and fight the hassle and do all that. But then I get
getting old, Bob. You're getting old.
I get a little bit of FOMO then, right? After that, I started going, oh my God, I'm missing out now. So anyway, it was amazing. And there were a couple other aspects of it too. We talked about Joey being so hot in the first half, and we'll get back to him in a second. Chris Brazzell, let's talk about this for a second, because that kid had a game. It's like the game we've been waiting for from Chris Brazzell. Have to say it's been kind of a slow roll since he came here last year. But yesterday he was unbelievable, right? He had 6 catches, 177 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2 of them were just monsters, though, 72 yards and 56 yards. That kind of performance couldn't have come at a better time. I mean, it felt like a legacy game for Chris Brazzell.
And Tennessee they sort of had been missing that big play guy.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it to me, Bob, for Tennessee is they had a lot of those guys yesterday. I think the last 3 meetings coming into this game yesterday between Georgia and Tennessee had 2 plays in the pass game, 2 of 20-plus yards.
Yeah.
They had 4 different guys yesterday who had catches over 20 yards. Brazzell, Staley, Mike Matthews showed up, even Kitzel in the tight end. You had different guys, Joey spreading the ball around. But when you're going to be really good in the pass game, you've got to be able to beat people over the top. You've got to be able to stretch the field. And that's what I think Brazzell is going to give him. And we've seen that from him now a couple of times. He wasn't just sort of a one-time wonder type of deal. We've seen that to this point, on multiple occasions by him. So that if Josh Heupel's offense is what he wants it to be, 2 things have to happen. Number one, they've got to stay committed to the run. And I thought yesterday, really, for the most part, they weren't spectacular running the ball, but they ran for 120, 130 yards. The running backs didn't lose yards. I don't think they had maybe had 1 yard of negative rushing yards among the running backs. That's always a good sign. But they've also got to be able to stretch the field, spread you out and stretch the field. And those things just sort of go hand in hand. And you saw a little bit more of that yesterday. But boy, that has got to be a sight for sore eyes for Tennessee fans, for Heupel, for Joey Halsley, everybody on that side of the ball, certainly, to see Tennessee make plays down the field. And I think you're right. I think Brazel's a guy that every defensive coordinator going forward, when they watch the film and they see him and see his ability to get down the field and get separation, then that's going to make preparation that week for Tennessee that much more difficult.
Yeah, I looked at the numbers too, in aggregate for the teams, right? Tennessee had, let's just call it, we'll round up, 500 yards total offense. They had 496, but I mean, close enough. 371 yards passing, a little less in the rushing attack than I was expecting, 125 yards. However, the Vols still managed to average about 3.7 yards per carry. So, I mean, they were still effective when they ran the ball. They just didn't run it as much as I imagined they would. But here's the thing, I want to get your take on this, Chris, because for all the things we're talking about, all the platitudes and all the superlatives about what we saw on the offense, something that concerned me, and I guess it just goes hand in hand with the way our offense operates, is even when they scored 41 points, Tennessee was nearly doubled in their time of possession by Georgia. It was like roughly 39-21 in favor of the Bulldogs. And we'll get to maybe some of the strategic play calling in a minute, but we had to weather some storms too. After Joey started so great in the first quarter, his second quarter was rough. After going 14 for 14, his next 14 attempts, he was 3 of 11 with 2 interceptions. Then he got hot again. He went 7 of 11 for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think Joey acquitted himself really well. So that's a good thing. But it was kind of uneven because the way our offense is rooted in tempo, if we start getting into a point where we're not completing passes, then that starts to shrink the ratio of time of possession, right? Because then we turn the ball back around to them. And, that just stands to reason. In the end, I felt like our defense, who stepped up in a lot of moments, I also felt, though, that they were gassed. And how couldn't they be?
Yeah, I was just getting ready to, that's perfect segue, say the thing about yesterday that's probably most disconcerting from Tennessee's perspective is I thought they did look tired. Kirby said after the game he felt like the difference was conditioning, that Georgia was in a little bit better shape. Now, I think the translation is more Georgia might be a little deeper than Tennessee at some spots. But here's the but. Tennessee is going to get some guys back in the defensive line, Bob. Maybe not this week against UAB, but I would bet you by the time they play Mississippi State in 2 weeks, which will be Tennessee's first road SEC game, right, you're going to see David Hobbs back in there. You're going to see Jackson Moy, 2 guys that would have started or certainly been right there in the starting rotation in the middle of that defensive line. Rodney Garner, Tennessee's defensive line coach, believes deeply in rotating players. He likes to play a ton of guys. And they tried to yesterday. There were several different times during the second half where I saw new guys on the field. But down the stretch, some of those guys that play a lot, Eason, probably played more snaps than Tennessee's defensive staff wanted them to play because they just didn't have a Moy to go to. They didn't have a Hobbs to go to, and that hurt them. So that's another reason I think going forward, if Tennessee can get healthy and get some of those guys back, they will be able to do a lot of what they did last year. I mean, Rodney played a ton of defensive linemen last season.
Yeah. And
felt like they had created maybe not quite that kind of depth, but close to it this year. But then you get Hobbs hurt early. You get Moy hurt, 2 of your key guys, and then you have to dip down. And it's hard for any coach, Bob, when you get in the fourth quarter of a tight game like that. It's just hard to pull a guy like Eason off the field and maybe put in somebody who's just not as good on a critical possession. And I think that's what you're talking about. You saw there the last couple of possessions. I did think Tennessee's defense started to get a little winded.
Yeah, I think and shout out to these guys because they gave their all, as we would say, right? I'm thinking of Dom Bailey, I'm thinking of Tyree West, those guys, and I think our guys from RTI said it in their post game. Those guys were at the end of the game, they were gassed.
Right.
Just I saw a picture of Tyree West or video just sitting on the field, just couldn't even get up. Some of that was probably disappointment too, but I mean, I just think these guys, they were worn out. And, as we talked about the rushing attack with Tennessee having 125 yards, and again, their yards per carry average was pretty solid. Georgia ran the ball 55 times. And I mean, you didn't need to be a genius to see what they were doing. And I mean, in the third quarter, it felt like we were just getting big boyed at every turn. I mean, on that one drive, that was pretty soul crushing. And I do appreciate the way Tennessee responded over time. But again, I think it comes back to just what you said. We've got to get healthy. We've got to get these guys back because that will then change the game from the perspective of depth. And that's pretty critical. By the way, I have a factoid for you back to Joey Aguilar. He has, I don't know if you saw this, but he has now emerged in the Heisman Trophy race, 5th best odds per FanDuel.
Yeah, he should be. I would say when you look across the country and measure what he's done against other quarterbacks, I can think of 5 or 6 more players who played better, or been more dynamic than he has to this point. But I agree. Georgia did what a lot of people want to do to Tennessee, Bob, is they want to keep Josh's offense off the field.
Right.
Play keep away, run the ball, play possession, shorten the game, make big plays, and there are not a lot of teams that were really able to do that or have been able to do that. Georgia's been one of the few. But again, to repeat, the good news is Vols are going to get Hobbs back. We're going to get Moy back. Not sure about this weekend, but probably most importantly, they should when they go to Mississippi State here in 2 weeks, which won't be a party to go to Starkville. I can promise you that if you're Tennessee. Now, along that injury front, I'm not sure about Jamon McCoy when he's going to return. Everybody I talk to over there says he's still not that close. They're not going to put him out there. He's coming off an ACL tear, remember, in January. He's a cornerback. That's a tough injury to come back from. They will not put him out there until he's ready to go. He's done little, if any, team period work. Would not expect to see him against UAB this week. Mississippi State could be a stretch. After State, though, they have a bye week, and then Arkansas. So Arkansas might be more realistic, maybe a long shot for Mississippi State. The other side, the other quarterback position, Ricky Gibson, the third, I think Bobby's done for the year. I don't think we'll see him back.
I was going to ask you. I started hearing a little scuttle about that today, so that's unfortunate. But if we can get – oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, he's got a sling on. He's had some surgery. I don't think Tennessee expects to get him back. Now, all that said, 2-3 years ago, if Tennessee had lost 2 cornerbacks of that caliber and had to dip down to their 4th or 5th corner, and Ty Redmond, and Georgia picked on him. We talked about that on your radio show last week, that Georgia was going to target him. He's a freshman, and they did. He gave up some big plays. But the mere fact that they have someone as a freshman of his caliber who's ready to play, they can put out there and play, says a lot about the way Tennessee stocked its roster. I mean, I don't think 2 years ago, if they had to dip down to their 4th cornerback, they'd have been in real trouble. This kid's going to get better. He gave up the touchdown, the beautiful throw that Stockton made to London Humphreys there in the corner. But you go back and watch the tape, he was in great position. So they've got some depth that they've created. And when you have to play kids like that early, it only helps you down the road. Because rarely, especially now as long as seasons are, you're going to play 13, 14, maybe 15 games. Rarely is it your top 22, 11 on D and 11 on I. You're going to have guys. You're going to need 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 DBs. You're going to need 8 and 9 offensive linemen. And that's where a game like that, you get a Sanders back healthy on the offensive line, you got to find ways to continue to create depth for the rest of the season. I think that's one of the key things to watch with this team as they continue to grow.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said there. And, I'm still thinking about what a bummer it is to lose Ricky, but I think everybody was kind of bracing for impact on that one after what we've been hearing. Let's talk for a second about Gunnar Stockton, because I don't know about you, but going into this weekend, we on the radio were talking about that the quarterbacks were the wild card. Who was going to step up? And we were trying to convince ourselves, Stockton hasn't played that many games yet in a setting. He played in the college football playoffs against Notre Dame, had a pretty good game, was failed by his line and a couple dropped passes from time to time. But man, he had never played in Neyland, right? We kept saying that. And hadn't thrown a pass that really was more than about 5 yards in terms of air. And then, a lot of yards after the catch from Zachariah Branch or whoever. I think now we know about Gunnar Stockton. Yesterday he was tough. You just mentioned the pass that led to the game being tied. And there's not much you can say about that pass. It was beautiful. It was, there was nobody else that could get to that ball except Humphreys, and he did, and he made a great catch, drug his feet, everything else. But what also struck me about Stockton, we knew he was mobile, and he was able to run. He added to run dimension to their offense, but also I lost count, but there was at least 3 or 4 times where he got nailed by our guys, but he had just enough time to get a pass off it. I mean, a meaningful pass. That's like NFL level stuff I was seeing there in the pocket. It just blew me away.
Yeah, he's a tough kid from up there in Northwest Georgia. His high school coach, Jabo Shaw, is the older brother of former South Carolina quarterback Connor Shaw. And I remember talking to him about Gunnar and just what a tough, smart, durable kid who rubs off on all the players around him. He's that type of player. And you was in the Georgia locker room after the game last night, man. Those kids were singing his praises. They truly believe in him. And it's funny, Bob, a lot of times the narratives going into a game, you're right. We all were talking about the quarterbacks, but we're talking about the quarterbacks in such a way as how good are they? Are they ready? This is Joey's first big test. Gunnar Stockton's never played an SEC game on the road. And yet both those kids were outstanding yesterday. Both of them played well enough to win the game. And going back to your initial comment as we started our show, if somebody would have told you before the game that Joey was going to throw 4 touchdown passes, run for another, Tennessee wins, right? I mean, there's no doubt in your mind that they're going to win the game. I don't think anybody thought Gunnar would throw for 300 yards.
Yeah.
And make some of the plays that he made under duress, as you point out. There were 3 or 4 throws he made where people were right in his face or drilled him as he was releasing the football. So, again, and listen, I'm guilty as charged, okay? Coming into the season, we're all talking about quarterbacks in this league. Arch, Lagway, Lenore Sellers, Nussmeier. And Nussmeier's been pretty good. But so far, it ain't been Arch. It ain't been Lagway. It hadn't been Sellers. Joey and Stockton have played as consistently as anybody. And even though Bama lost early, Ty Simpson's starting to play great at Bama. So I felt like this would be an intriguing year at the quarterback position. And I think it's only going to get more intriguing. And Tennessee will see this kid down the road. But Taylor Green at Arkansas is a problem. That kid can throw it. He can run it. You're gonna face somebody pretty good at that position every week in this league. And I always remind myself, 39 years in the business, just when you feel like, hey, I've got a pretty good feel about who can play at a certain position going into the season, it never works out quite the way you think it does.
Yeah. Now we've gone through kind of a roll call there, but then you still got Blake Shapen who's playing well, and Pavia who plays well, and we're gonna get to some of the SEC stuff here in a minute. But Chris, I wanted to get your take, because you were at the game, you had a chance to go into some of the post-game pressers, etc. I'd love to get your takeaway from. We know Josh's MO, and he's not necessarily going to be as insightful as we'd like. He's plays things close to the vest. But I wanted to get your take on, what you felt like you heard from him, as well as what you heard from Kirby. You've touched on a little of it already, but I'd love to hear a little more about that.
Yeah, let's start with Josh. I thought Josh was really composed. after that game. He usually is. He doesn't show a lot of emotion. I've certainly seen him a lot more down after losses than he was yesterday. And even after wins, and I'm not talking about the win over Bama in 22 where he had the stogie in his mouth, but he's pretty much just Josh. You know, that's one of his superpowers. He's pretty even killed all the time. But I felt like yesterday, and then talking to some other people today around him, around the program, that I think he knew that they were right there with a chance to beat Georgia. A play here, a play there. And the thing he also knows, Bob, is they didn't just get pushed around, and they can get better and will get better. He also knows that they're not close to being full strength health wise, and will get healthier, should get healthier. I think he also knows his quarterback's going to get better. You nailed it, man. Joey was on campus for what, 3.5 months before he played his first football game. And you look at the way he's fit. I give him tons of props, man. The first thing he did when he got on campus is he got to know his teammates. He went out with them. They went out to dinner. They spent every waking second in the indoor throwing and working on chemistry and timing, and not just with his receivers, but with the defensive guys. And you could tell there's a real bond between he and his teammates. I think Josh knows all this. And I think when you watch him and see some of his comments from yesterday, he understands what this league is. And let's switch over to Kirby now, because Kirby said what I've been thinking for a while. You know, one of the first things he says is, we might have to apologize for winning this one. I don't know we deserve to win the game. But guess what? That's the way it's going to be every week in this league.
Yeah.
There are going to be some games you win where you probably don't deserve to win. And guess what else? There's going to be some games that you lose, you know, and that you did deserve to win. It's going to be vice versa. And I don't see, Bob, a lot of easy outs on this schedule for anybody the rest of the way. Some schedules are more difficult than others. And I do think there will be a lot of carnage in this league. I'm going to make a prediction. This is our first show, so everybody likes predictions. I would say there will only be one team, only one, that doesn't have at least two losses. Period. Not just conference games, but overall, when this thing's all said and done. And it wouldn't floor me if everybody in the league, once the SEC championship game is played and we get to the playoff, if every school has at least two losses. I think that's how balanced. I think we're at true parity. I talked to another coach today, and he said this is as close as it's ever been in the NFL. That's what NIL has done. That's what the portal has done. And you look at schools like Bama and Georgia, who used to stockpile guys. I mean, they'd have guys that were their fifth and sixth and seventh defensive tackle. I'd go watch them practice at Alabama, Bob, the defensive lineman in the corner. And, you know, they don't have their names on the back of their jersey and they're practicing. Heck, I can tell the ones from the threes. Those days are over because those kids go elsewhere and play.
Yeah.
You've seen that. Tennessee gets Lear to come in and play tackle. He couldn't get on the field at LSU because they had 2 first or second round picks at tackle. He comes to Tennessee, and he's really rounding into shape to be a quality tackle. That's the difference now in the sport. And that's why I think this year, and if you're a Tennessee fan and you walk out of there, you know that, all right, maybe we do lose one more. Well, that's not the end of the world because guess what? Georgia's going to lose. LSU's going to lose. Alabama's already lost outside the conference. There's going to be a lot more of that. You better grow as a team. You better stay healthy, and that's sometimes just luck. Okay, and you better keep your quarterback healthy, and that's the hardest thing. When you play 13, 14 games, keeping your quarterback healthy the entire time can get dicey.
Yeah. You know, I'll share with you something I've said before, and I stand by it, is it's kind of odd to think this way, but a way to, in my opinion, gauge the progress of an athletic program, really football or basketball, but in this case, it's football, is how many kids transfer out. And what I mean by that is if they're transferring out mostly because it's about playing time, that means you've got that many guys, you know, and, you know, you've seen Alabama have this happen. You've seen Georgia have it happen. Ohio State have it happen. I think Tennessee's getting closer to that, but it's kind of what you're speaking to. This is where we are. There's so much parity because some of these kids now, they're going to be like, yeah, I want to play for one of those brand names, but I don't know if I can go to Texas Tech and get a bunch of money and be a starter in the Big 12. I'm going to go do it. And that just makes a team like Texas Tech that much more of a threat too. So it's definitely interesting times for sure. One thing I almost glanced over, and I think we need to take a minute to talk about it because the fans have been raging about it. And I have to admit, I've got a point of view on it too, and that is the level of conservativeness on some of the play calling at certain times in the game by Josh. I wanted to get your take on this because yesterday, first of all, one thing I didn't mention about the defense, we talked about the defense by and large stepping up, which sounds crazy when you say they gave up 500 yards and 44 points. But that defensive unit had 3 sacks of Stockton, which is just about as many sacks as Tennessee's had against Georgia in entirety over the last like 4 games. So they did their best to get to Gunner. And I'm thinking specifically of Josh Joseph's sack and then the fumble and the recovery by Tennessee deep in Georgia territory. And then we had some inopportune. We had 2 penalties that were backbreakers, right? Both of them were, false starts. And we had one in that offensive series. And we were talking about it on the RTI thread saying, do we think that kind of set Josh back in his thinking? Because I would have liked to have seen us go for the jugular there. When you're in a situation where you haven't beaten Georgia for 8 straight years, and you know that you got to put them away. They just keep finding ways. They did it yesterday. They reinvented themselves and played the way that they needed to win the game. Wasn't vintage Georgia football, but it worked. I just felt like we needed a touchdown there. And we were going back and forth on the text thread. There were some that were saying, I think I'm good with the field goal that put us up 8. Where do you net out on that, Chris?
By nature, Josh is always going to be a go for it kind of coach. I don't really think it's in his DNA to sit on the football and kick field goals. So I don't know that was his thought process. No one had really been stopping anybody on either side of the football, which made that play, that defensive play. And I'm sitting there watching the game, and I'm thinking, okay, that's what Tennessee needed. They needed that type of difference-making negative play on defense to really completely change the complexion of this game. I thought they might even take a shot at first down, to be honest with you. And, yeah, maybe as you said, the false start penalty changed things. But, no, at that point, if you can put them away and you're at home and that crowd is at a fever pitch, that's, it's like being – I don't know I think you're a golfer. If you're way up high on the tee box and you're looking down in the fairway, and it's just got that perfect view of just winding up, taking a whack at it with the big club. Tennessee to me felt like at that point they were going to go for the throat, try to put them away, get a couple first downs, make that top clock tick down, or make Kirby use timeouts, score a touchdown. And instead of being up 38-0, you're up 8-30. You're up 42-30.
Yeah.
And that crowd is just in delirium. And yes, if I get to play Monday morning quarterback, now I don't make as much money as Josh does, not quite as much. You might be a little closer to him than I am, Bob. But if I could have one do-over as coach, if I'm coaching that team, I would have been more aggressive. And you know what? I bet you as he self-scouts, and I know he does, he probably thinks the same way. But they still had to come down, score, get a 2-point conversion, which they did. But in my yard, with the crowd going crazy, Georgia looked a little gassed on defense. You sort of had them on their heels. Because think about it. They had to go right. Georgia turns the football over. Defense has to go right back out on the field. That's tough, on the road. And I thought they would sort of go for the throat there and try to get a couple of first downs and end it, because I don't see Georgia coming back and winning that game. Tennessee goes up 2 scores.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And then fast forward to the end of the game. That one was puzzling to me. Obviously, you're going for the field goal, but I think conventional wisdom, and I agreed with it, was don't give Georgia a second to get the ball back.
Right.
Let's run it all the way down. But we had another false start, moves us back 5 yards. And then that's the part that was inexplicable to me. I still felt like, okay, try to maybe get a couple yards back. You still have your timeouts. But then Josh went ahead and sent Max Gilbert out. We know the rest by now. And I'm not sure the 5 yards would have mattered. The kick was very wide right. But those were the only, and I mean, I feel like they were big, but those were the only things I saw in this game where I was like, man, we had them, and we let them go. And those were a couple of instances where I think we could have done more or tried to do more, and we didn't. But I don't know. It's just, I know that's going to be a hot topic everybody's going to be talking about all week long. But like you said, I'm sure Josh is a competitor, man. I'm sure, today it's on his mind a lot.
The funny thing, Bob, if Tennessee makes that field goal, walk-off field goal, guess who'd be getting crushed right now? Kirby, for not using timeouts to stop the clock earlier on that drive. Because I'm sitting there beside my longtime friend Mark Slabaugh, who's with ESPN now, and we're looking at each other like, why is Kirby not calling timeout? Because it got to the point where, all right, he makes it, Tennessee wins, he misses it, you go into overtime.
Yeah.
Georgia wasn't going to have any time. So I guess there's a little bit of gamesmanship there. But the funny thing is, I can promise you, if he makes that field goal and we're having this conversation, or they're having this conversation in Georgia on a Georgia talk radio, he is absolutely getting skewered for letting that clock tick down and not trying to save some time. So if they get the ball back, maybe they've got 50 seconds or what have you, or a minute. Yeah. So it works both ways. Again, I'll say this. I thought Georgia, too, was a little gassed there toward the end. And even if you throw the football and stop the clock, it's an incompletion for Tennessee, they're still not going to have a lot. Maybe they have 20 seconds or 17 seconds, not a lot, to move the ball back down the field. Because remember, it's obviously a field goal wins it at that point, but they're not going to have much time. We'll be in this situation. When I say we will see this situation play out again, I bet, at some point this year. Hopefully for Tennessee's sake, it's in the playoff or another big game, be it Florida, Alabama. But it's over and above everything else, the fact that Tennessee was able to move the football the way they did on a Kirby Smart defense. They hadn't come close to doing that until this point. I think sets up well for Tennessee as they go forward. And they will grow. Aguilar will get better when they work Sanders back in the lineup. And I don't know what they're going to do with Perry out there at right. Do you move him to guard and move Sanders out to tackle? At least you have those options, Bob. But you want to win that football game if you're Tennessee. But I think there's a lot of – put it this way, and I wrote this earlier. There's a lot more optimism as I stand 1,000 feet away and look at it than there is pessimism that Tennessee can go on and be a playoff football team even after a 9 straight. I know that's hard to hear that number if you're a Vol fan, 9 in a row, but even after 9 straight losses in that series, I think there's a lot to take away that says Tennessee still can very much be a playoff football team.
Yeah, I believe that too. So that's a good segue into, as we start to wind the show down, quick discussion point, maybe a lightning round question. So even in a loss, it sounds like I think we're both simpatico on this. Do we feel better about this team than before when we went into the Georgia game, or worse? I'm speaking for myself. I feel better about it. I feel like when we were exchanging texts last night, I think, I don't want to speak for you, but it felt like you were kind of saying the same thing. Felt like there's a lot to build on.
Well, you know a whole lot more about your team. Let's say they play UAB this week.
Yeah.
Instead of Georgia. You win 47-13. You know a whole lot more about your football team right now as you get ready to go into the teeth of the SEC schedule than you would have had you played somebody else that was, glorified scrimmage. Listen, Syracuse is not a good football team. And I know Tennessee beat them pretty soundly. I don't know, and I said this coming out of that first, I don't know what that really said about Tennessee. Yeah, you won by, 3 touchdowns or more?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I know a whole lot more about Tennessee right now, Bob, than I did coming out of that opener against Syracuse, and they lost the football game.
That's a good way to put it. I agree. Yeah. And like we were saying, and I think that's a good segue into what I call the company we keep, which is how the SEC is looking. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. I mean, I think we talked about it when you were on the radio with us on Friday, that if Tennessee had beaten Georgia and if Florida had beaten LSU, all of these teams, except for Tennessee that we talk about, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, LSU, Texas, they would have all had one loss. Now, it didn't play out that way, but we're still not far from that. A little bit of chaos going on right now when it comes to the SEC. We'll start with LSU. They took care of their business against Florida last night, but boy, not very convincing, Chris. I mean, 10 first downs, 20-10 win. And that was in addition to the fact that, DJ Lagway threw 5 interceptions and they couldn't really convert on that. But let me tell you, I'm sure you saw this. Don't ask Brian Kelly about it. I don't know if you saw any of his posts.
Yeah, I thought you were going to actually call and see if we could get Brian on the show tonight. And my first question was going to be, Brian, what about that offense, man?
Yeah.
Maybe we can get him to pound the table if we get him on. But
I think it was a fair question, by the way. I mean, I know they have a demanding.
It's funny how it changes, right? Last 2 years, they couldn't stop anybody on defense. They were scoring 40 points every game. And now all of a sudden, all right, what's going on with the offense? And he doesn't like the questioning, but he won't be the last coach that doesn't like some question.
Yeah,
I mean, you never asked, but I think you're on to what we've been saying. It just, if you don't play well or you don't continue to grow. I mean, I watched the end of that Ole Miss Arkansas game last night. Ole Miss is playing with his second string quarterback, and he has just this monster game.
He looked good.
Here comes Arkansas driving for the potential winning touchdown and fumbles the football at the 30, I think. I think if they don't fumble the ball, they're going to score and win that game. I think we're going to be in for those types of games a lot this year. Vanderbilt didn't beat South Carolina at South Carolina. And if you've ever been to Columbia to play on a Saturday night, that is a tough, tough place to play. Vanderbilt dominated that football game in the second half. Now, all of a sudden, Lenore Sellers is out with a concussion. That changed the whole landscape from a South Carolina perspective. Texas A&M goes on the road, and you talk about playing big boy football. They big boyed and bloodied Notre Dame's nose and won at Notre Dame. Arch Manning, I don't think, is ready to be compared anytime soon to his uncle, Peyton Manning. He's got the last name, but he hasn't had a game to this point. So I love it when and I'm as guilty of as anybody, we get ahead of ourselves. But once we get into the season, Bob, it's sort of what you do on the field. And I haven't seen nearly enough. There's not nearly enough data points for me to say who's the best team, who's the worst team. I think there's about 10 teams, legitimately, maybe 12, that I could point to right now and say, well, things go right. I'll give you an example. Auburn plays at Oklahoma this coming Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 2 unbeaten football teams, 2 transfer quarterbacks. Of course, Arnold came from Oklahoma. Mateer comes in from Washington State, and he's been fabulous so far. That game's going to tell us a lot about both of those teams. You mentioned LSU. LSU still has to play here in the next week or two at Ole Miss. I bet you once we get into October, and I think you include Tennessee going to Starkville in a couple of weeks. Once we get into October, it's going to be even more jumbled.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you talk about Texas A&M, and I watched a fair amount of that game last night against Notre Dame. Texas A&M is a team, in my opinion, that could sneak up and win the SEC. I mean, they have got some serious talent, man. We know about Marcel Reed. We know about Le'Veon Moss. This Mario Craver kid, 207 yards receiving last night. I mean, looks like a world-class sprinter out there too.
Yeah.
Elko's got some players, man. They got personnel, and that's just one. And to your point with Texas, I'm beginning to wonder. I mean, I think water will find its level, but man, Arch just does not look that good right now. And that means Texas, as a result, is not that good either.
He just doesn't look comfortable to me. He just looks really not very instinctive. I don't know if it's confidence. he didn't just forget how to play. He's still got plenty of game. He's just going to have to show it. And they really, outside of Ohio State, they haven't played a lot of really good football teams either. Texas hasn't. So he's going to play a lot better competition on a weekly basis going forward. There's Alabama, Georgia in 2 weeks really intrigues me, Bob, because they both have off weeks this week. Big for Georgia. Georgia was banged up in their offensive line too. Two of their starters didn't finish the football game last night. So Bama gets I think Bama feels pretty comfortable that they'll get their running back, Jam Miller, back against Georgia. They'll get their best defensive tackle, Tim Keenan III, who hasn't played since the first week. He had a tightrope surgery on his ankle. Those are two big pieces for Alabama. And they got an extra week to get them healthier and rest them. So that game will tell a lot about Bama. Bama loses that game, and they come out of September with 2 losses. They're going to have a hard time clawing their way back into the playoff because they have some tough games left on their schedule. But if they win, I think it just gives credence to everything we've discussed. Then it's going to be a hodgepodge in this league.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we need to give Vandy their flowers, man. They absolutely dominated South Carolina last night, and I mean, South Carolina did not look like the number 11 team in the country. Vandy gets into the AP poll this week at 20. They deserve to be there, and we haven't even talked about Missouri. Missouri is like they have one of the more favorable schedules in the conference, and they got this Ahmad Hardy kid yesterday runs for 250 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this just. Again, it reinforces what you were just saying. I mean, I think there's the opportunity for total chaos in this conference is real. I mean, it's there is nothing easy. What we once thought Mississippi State would be the worst team in the conference, not sure that's the case now, man. You got to be on your heels when you go down to Starkville, and that's advice to Tennessee, man. I know Josh is probably thinking that way.
Well, guess what? State will probably be unbeaten when Tennessee goes there in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Do you have any cowbells? Are you gonna go? Have you ever been there and shaken any cowbells or heard them?
No.
Pretty loud.
That's what I hear.
Pretty loud.
I have no desire to be there to hear them either. But.
And listen, South Carolina didn't look like the number 10 team in the country because they're not. They were probably as overrated. Maybe the only team more overrated was in that same state was Clemson to start the season. But Lenore Sellers, a lot of times, Bob, when we come into a season and quarterback is getting a lot of pop, and those of us in the media and coaches who do the preseason polls, you give a lot more credence to those teams who have quote-unquote big-time quarterbacks or guys who are top 20 projected prospects in the pros, and we don't look hard enough around them. South Carolina always was going to be suspect in the offensive line, and they've not played very well at all in the offensive line to this point. And now Sellers is hurt. He's got a concussion. They go to Missouri, and I thought the biggest thing Missouri had going for them this season was their schedule was probably as manageable as anybody in the SEC.
Yeah.
I remember Spur used to always say, you can't compare teams to teams because you got to look at their schedules. And it's never apples to apples. And he's right. I mean, look at Missouri's schedule and compare that to Florida's or Oklahoma's or Arkansas's. It's night and day.
Yep.
Even within the same conference. So I'm not surprised that Vandy won. I'm surprised they won as decisively as they did. But Clark Lee's the real deal. He is a ball coach. He has been able to create the kind of depth at Vandy they typically haven't had. Those kids believe. I spent a day there at spring practice in April. And Diego Pavia, whether you hate him, whether you love him, whether you love watching him play, he's one of those guys, if he's your quarterback, you love him, right?
Yeah.
If he's not, you can't stand him. But man, he is such a rallying point for that team. He's fearless. He plays tough. He'll take on every linebacker in his way. And that's the way Vanderbilt has played. They're going to be a tough out for everybody they play.
Yeah.
I don't think they're a fluke at all.
Yeah. Well, let's look ahead to next week as we wrap the show up. And usually what we'll do on this show is we'll spend a little more time on the opponent ahead, but being candid, the opponent ahead in this one, Tennessee's 36.5-point favorites against UAB. They roll into town. Game is Saturday, of course, 12:45 on SEC Network. The Blazers are 2-1. They've beaten Alabama State and Akron. They've lost a conference game to Navy. They allow 475 yards per game on average, 36 points per game. Now, they have some NFL bloodlines with Trent Dilfer as the head coach and Jalen Kitna, John Kitna's boy, as the quarterback. As we close out, Chris, what should we expect in this one? Do you think, knowing you're closer to Josh than I am, does he allow for hangovers? Not at home, I don't think he does. I don't think we're alone for a hangover. I think this will be a total blitz by our guys. What do you think?
No, man, I'm right there with you. When they're supposed to beat teams badly at home under Josh, they almost always do.
Yeah,
and he's really good at his team, getting his teams back up off the ground. I think now this is not an SEC game, Bob. In the last 3 years, they've only lost back-to-back or consecutive SEC games once, and that was in 23. But he gets his teams ready to play after a loss. They get better. I think this is a week that they'll get to play a lot of guys. Should be able to play a lot of guys because there's, as I said, there were too many guys, certainly in the offensive and defensive line, who probably played too many snaps.
Yeah,
against Georgia. So no, I don't. I'd be shocked to see any kind of letdown. I think this is a team that understands what's in front of it. They understand that they've got a good football team. And so, no, I don't think this is, they got Dilfer coming in, the former NFL quarterback. There's some Tennessee ties. UAB's ADs, Mark Ingram, played at Tennessee, was a assistant AD at Tennessee for a while. Dan Carlson was there on Mark's staff. He worked for a long time in Tennessee's athletic academic umbrella. So a lot of good folks over there. Chris Mortensen's son, Alex Mortensen, is on that staff. The late Chris Mortensen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been tough sledding for UAB to this point. And I think they catch Tennessee, quite frankly, at a bad time.
Yeah, I'd say so. Well, we'll be back here next week to talk about that and then look ahead to that Mississippi State game, which all of a sudden is going to carry more weight than we expected when the season started. So can't wait to do that. We've got our first one in the books, Chris. Hope you enjoyed it. I did.
I look forward to, as I said, Sunday nights. Love talking ball. There's always a lot to talk about. I love the fact tonight we dissected. I mean, there'll be owners from NFL clubs calling the two of us wanting to coach their teams because we at least sounded like we knew what we were talking about tonight. But I love being able to dissect the game from the day before and then point ahead. And I think we picked a good year to start this show because it's going to be pretty unpredictable here in the SEC.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you, buddy. I hope you have a great, great week. And you, the listener and viewer, appreciate you spending time with us. We'll be right back here again next week. He's Chris Lowe. I'm Bob Baskerville. Thank you so much for joining us on the RTI Lowdown. We'll talk to you again next time.